This video is brought to you by Brilliant. As you'll know by now, the Conservative Party's 2024 general election campaign has all but fallen off a cliff. They faced enough political challenges already, from Sunak's D-Day blunder to the return of Nigel Farage to a series of election betting scandals by Tory staffers. But now they're also seeing their donations fizzle away. According to new data published last Friday by the Electoral Commission, in the second week of the campaign, Labour received 15 times the amount of large donations as the Tories, and the Liberal Democrats and Reform UK have each raised more money than the Conservatives too. So in this video, we'll take a look at the campaign donation data, why the Tories are losing money, and what might happen next.
Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos.
So let's start with the figures. On Friday, the UK's Electoral Commission, the independent body responsible for regulating party and election finances, published its latest data on donations made to political parties during the second week of campaigning. The results were pretty mind-blowing. Labour received close to £4.4 million, a more than 75% share of the total donations across all parties. The next largest share, 13%, went to Reform UK, who received roughly £750,000, £500,000 of which came from a company directed by the party chairman Richard Tice. In third place were the Liberal Democrats, who raised £335,000, a 6% share, and in fourth place were the Conservatives, who raised less than £300,000, just 5% of the total donations. Now, whilst this is just a one-week snapshot, and we'll have to wait for the total figures after the end of the campaign, still, when we compare it to historic data, these stats look even worse. In the first 2 weeks of the 2024 campaign, the Tories raised £889,000, a mere 14% of the £8.6 million they raised in the same period in 2019. Moreover, the Tories' total share of 2019 donations was 63%, whilst Labour trailed with only a 17.6% share. So what's gone wrong for the Conservative Party, and why are they apparently losing money? Well, one extra bit of context to point out before we get into it is that last year, the Tories received £47.4 million in donations, considerably more than Labour's £21.7 million, which, according to a senior Conservative official, means that Labour are actually playing catch-up. However, so far in 2024, Labour has landed £15.5 million in funding from individuals, companies, unions and others, exceeding the £9.9 million given to the Conservatives. Moreover, the stats from the first couple of weeks of the campaign clearly paint a picture of a Tory party struggling for funding. So why is this? Well, the first thing to say is that historically, the Tories have tended to rely on companies and individuals for donations, while Labour typically receive higher donations from trade unions, which made up 93% of Labour's donations in 2019. However, this year has seen a number of high-profile business people and companies ditch the Tories due to their poor polling, with some even switching to Labour. This is because, according to almost every major poll, the Tories are on track for a colossal defeat at the general election, and donors are reluctant to support a campaign that they view as a bad investment. For example, in early June, a trio of unnamed senior Tory donors, all wealthy business people who've each given at least £250,000 to the party in the past, decided to organise their own private poll, which came back showing Labour was still on track for a Tony Blair-style landslide. Afterwards, they all resolved not to give any money to Sunak's campaign. A Tory ally told the Financial Times that many donors were, quote, confused that the campaign isn't gripping the fundamental questions about the economy, growth and the Brexit dividend, and that they simply didn't want to be associated with Sunak's faltering campaign. As for those switching to Labour, there's an obvious logic here too. Donors are more incentivised to support the party that's going to be in government, so they can exert more influence over political affairs, especially those affecting business. For example, John Caldwell, the founder of Phones for You, was one of the biggest donors to Boris Johnson's campaign in 2019, but he's now ditched the Conservatives for Labour, having become increasingly critical of what he called the Tories' failures. Among them, he cites Rishi's mismanagement of the economy during COVID, Boris's lowering of ethical standards and the accusation that Tory cronies benefited improperly regarding COVID PPE, and then the Liz Truss debacle. He also called Sunak an absolute dud, and said that in Labour's manifesto, economic growth was front and centre, and that he will be doing his best to influence them in government. Another issue is that while some Tory loyalists are opting either not to donate or to donate to Labour, others have actually switched their allegiance to rival right-wing parties that they feel ideologically more aligned with. Multi-millionaire businessman Jeremy Hosking, a former Conservative donor, caused controversy earlier this month when he announced that he would give £5,000 to Tory MPs who agreed to back 4 pledges of the right-wing populist Reclaim movement, launched by the controversial activist Laurence Fox, which Hosking now bankrolls as well as the Reform Party. These pledges were leaving the European Court of Human Rights, repealing the Human Rights Act, banning all forms of gender reassignment for children, and reforming the Equality Act to eliminate sex and race-based discrimination. Despite the Tory party chairman warning Tory MPs not to accept the cash, 4 of them went ahead anyway as they were so short on funding. So what's all this likely to mean for the Tories? Well, this year marks a significant departure from the trend seen in 2019, when a group of 71 so-called private super donors gave £21.5 million to the Conservative Party, making it the largest beneficiary of individual donors. In fact, the share of party donations coming from ultra-wealthy donors, which has disproportionately benefited the Tories, has increased over the decades, accounting for 60% of all donations in 2019, up from 50% from 2010 to 2019 and 40% in the mid-2000s. So this year, it appears the tables have turned, with Labour earning significantly more from individual donors than the Conservatives. Whilst this could help level the historical financial imbalance between the two parties that some analysts thought might persist into the 2024 election, it's far too soon to say that the resource gap between Labour and the Conservatives is closing. This is because, despite some wealthy Tory donors switching their allegiance for the current campaign, others have only paused their funding and are waiting to see what happens with the Tories after the election. For example, the group of anonymous Conservative donors we mentioned earlier have said that they would consider backing certain Tory MPs, including Priti Patel, Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman, if they entered a party leadership contest after a defeat in the general election. So we'll just have to keep an eye on what happens in the wake of the results, and whether a Labour supermajority could entice even more donors away from the Tories' rather rough patch. Looking around the political stage, there's a good number of people who are probably eyeing up new jobs at the moment, so it might be a good time for Rishi & Co to grab a subscription to Brilliant. That's because Brilliant is the platform where you learn by doing, with thousands of interactive lessons in maths, data analysis, programming and AI, all of which are important skills whether you're currently in the jobs market or just looking to learn new things. As existing users will already know, Brilliant is a uniquely effective learning platform. Their first principles approach helps you build understanding from the ground up. Each lesson is filled with hands-on problem solving that lets you play with concepts, a method proven to be 6 times more effective than watching lecture videos. Plus, if you are looking for a new job, say you're eyeing up a move to California to get into tech, Brilliant's growing number of programming courses are a great way to build foundations and learn real-world applications. Their courses help you learn essential coding elements, from loops and variables to nesting and conditionals, as well as developing your mind to think like a programmer, building a strong foundation in writing robust programs. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, click on the link in the description. Plus, when you do subscribe, you'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription.